probably shared quite a few of those influences, didn't we? Because Tim's mum and dad are my godparents, so we grew up in the same town and have known each other since we were small kids, and a lot of time was spent sitting in the back of Tim's mum and dad's car, going on long journeys all over the place, often to cricket matches and stuff. And there was a lot of music played in the car at the time.
We didn't always agree though, did we? I think we were united on the Beatles and Radiohead.
Simon and Garfunkel as well. That was that live recording from Central Park that was very popular. Yeah.
But I couldn't really get you into U2.
No.
At that stage, at least.
No, that was later on though. That was more of a teenage thing. Yeah, because Tim and Richard were that bit older than me, so they were, only. But they kept they were sort of massively into U2 and REM, and they were trying to kind of, impose their tastes on me, and it took me a while to catch up, I think.
Because as the Beatles and Buddy Holly and Paul Simon and all that stuff, obviously is the sort of stuff you get from your parents.
Yeah.
Because that was their generation. But for me, like the first kind of seeing the light with actual contemporary pop music at the time was the Pet Shop Boys.
Erasure as well.
Erasure, yeah. And I think you can still see that sort of, or hear that super kind of melodic influence in our music.
Yeah, for sure. And so the beginnings of Keane started with a band playing covers, right? Is that a misconception?
That's sort of slightly, been misinterpreted over the years. We definitely played some covers, sort of learning how to do it and how everything worked together and all of that. But there were always original songs right from the very beginning.
So you formed a band to write and make your own music. That was kind of like the aim from the offset, as opposed to just going around playing pub gigs and playing covers.
Yeah, we were never a sort of kind of function band. We
would have been too crap, really.
Function. They've always got really proper musicians in, but I think we liked that thing of I suppose all the bands we loved wrote their own songs basically. Obviously the Beatles were that was a huge shift at the time in the 60s from the sort of songwriter, pro-songwriter kind of industry into bands actually writing their own songs, and I think we loved that idea.
And when did you decide to form a band? What kind of?
Well, I remember doing stuff with Tim when I would have been probably 10 or 11. So, thankfully, those recordings have been lost or destroyed. But we were definitely doing stuff even right back then, but we didn't really formally start trying to do it properly until I was probably 16, 17, and you guys were 19, 20, something like that. Left school.
Yeah, I mean our first actual gig was in 1998, so we sort of did that around for quite a long time.
Where was that?
That was the Hope and Anchor in Islington. Legendary little rock venue.
Yeah.
If it's still there, is it still there?
Yeah, very much.
And how was your first performance?
It wasn't very good.
Your first note was a semitone out.
Yeah, which started with a mistake and carried on in the same vein, really. But we had some.
But it obviously made you want to continue.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's addictive, isn't it? The feeling you get to the end of it and you think, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever." It's such a thrill.
Yeah, and I think we did it in quite an old-fashioned way. It took us a long time to get a record deal, and we had to really learn from our mistakes. And there wasn't really a scene or anyone around who was kind of giving us great advice. So we kind of had to learn it all as we went along.
You guys had to show quite remarkable perseverance by the sound of it.
Yeah, we're very stubborn.
Yeah.
Because if your first gig was not 98 and your first record came out in 2004, and today especially, like, people don't really seem to like putting in much graft before making it big. It's like, you know, the X Factor and all that seems to be a more conventional route. I guess that's kind of got worse.
I think it's in a way it's easier. There's more help out there. So there's the music colleges which have sprung up all over the place, and then obviously in terms of recording as well. Like in those days, really, if you wanted to make a decent recording, you had to try and get some downtime off a proper professional studio. Whereas now, obviously, you can make great recordings in your bedroom, and so I think that made it harder for us at the time.
So were you very keen? Was your kind of aim to get noticed and get a record deal?
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, we didn't really know what else to do. You know, you just sort of look at your heroes and you know, you read a bit about them and think, oh yeah, well they did this, and then they played this great gig, and someone from a record company came along and saw them, and so, you know, we kind of thought, well, that will all happen in a couple of weeks. But yeah, you know, it was. I think we did have. I suppose we were quite ambitious in terms of the bands that we liked were kind of big bands. It wasn't like we were sort of wanted to keep things super kind of indie and were sort of scared of getting big or anything. But I mean, to be honest, I think at that stage all you're really thinking about is getting a record made, and that's sort of the dream, and you don't really think beyond that.
And what was sort of like the toughest point along the way to getting that record deal?
Well, there was a time when we were offered a record. We thought a record deal was on the table with what were they? Ministry of Sound,
2M,
which were, you know, which was a decent enough label at the time, and yeah, we thought the deal was on the table, and we were all waiting at Richard, our drummer's flat, ready to go, weren't we, and go off and sign it, very excited, and then we waited and waited all day, and it just never materialised. And I think that was, I remember that feeling like a bit of a killer blow. But I think we were always just very stubborn, weren't we? We thought we're gonna see this through and make it happen.
And in these years, like, how many gigs would you play? You know, were you literally touring up and down the UK and really, or was it mainly in London?
Yeah, we were living in London, but I mean, obviously you've got very sort of limited funds and limited demand as well. So we play probably a gig every 2 or 3 weeks, was it?
I think you were only allowed to play one a month or something, weren't you?
There was a bit of a thing on this, because you were basically playing around Camden, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's sort of North London circuit, and they all obviously had to build up a bit of demand of your sort of 20 friends who you could, you know, force to come and see you yet again. We used to go and play. We played in Maidstone. We played in this pub in High Wycombe a couple of times. I mean, anywhere who would have us basically. But we played so many gigs to really not many people, if any. We did have organised one little tour, I think. Or was that something to do with Fierce Panda?
I can't honestly remember. It's too long ago.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we would rehearse a lot, especially as time went on. We got more and more focused about it, and just tried to get better and better. And we were writing more all the time, and the songs were getting better. And our playing was, I mean, bear in mind we were really total chances as far as the actual playing went. We needed to practice a lot.
And were you guys playing by ear?
Yeah.
And writing by ear?
Yeah.
Just scribbling down.
You could probably
ish. Yeah.
But it's all natural. And so the so there was there like a special gig and a special turning point where you met the label? Did it transpire as you had kind of dreamed?
I guess it sort of.
Yeah. Well, we went out to France for a summer in 2001 because programmer at the time, was programmer, producer guy James Sanger, who was a guy we met on our sort of, I think working with a producer called Mark Wallace, who gave us a bit of a tryout at one point. And so James said, oh, I've got this old farmhouse out in northern France and you guys should come out and basically be my guinea pigs in terms of recording there for the first time. And he was doing it up as he went along, so it was quite dilapidated, but it was lovely really. And we spent a summer there, which started with everyone full of kind of enthusiasm and high hopes, and actually we made some really great strides, I think, at the time, sort of in terms of the sound of the band. And Tim had written a lot of really good songs at that point, which ended up on Hopes and Fears. So we were working on those songs, and and that sort of that turned a bit sour towards the end, and we came back to the UK. And I think it was probably after that, wasn't it, that we then met with Simon Williams from Fierce Panda. He came to a show, little acoustic gig that we did at the Betsy Trotwood in Farringdon, and then he said, this sounds great, and I'll put a song or two out for you guys. So he put Everybody's Changing out on Fierce Panda
as a single before it ended up on Hopes and Fears.
Exactly, and then it got on Radio 1 on Steve Lamack's show, evening show, and then suddenly things changed.
Gathered,
yeah.
Huge pace. I mean that record really. Yeah, I mean I still remember listening to it. It's just a fantastic album. It hasn't aged at all, but it also felt at the time like you guys were revisiting that sort of the sort of Beatlesy type of songwriting and just making it sound fresh and relevant. And like, do you guys, do you still look back on that record and think like, wow, like this is awesome? And do you still enjoy playing those songs?
Yeah, I mean it's a very exciting time for us. I mean it's something you mentioned about sort of X Factor and stuff. When I look at all the people who are starting out now, they seem so sort of knowing. They all seem to have such a grip on like the industry and stuff. I mean, we had no idea what we were doing, even with Hopes and Fears. Like they were just a bunch of songs we'd written and we were playing in the pubs and stuff, and then it's like, okay, it's time to record an album, and so we just did our 12 best ones. We had no concept of like, I don't know, it certainly became something quite big. But yeah, I mean it was very, very exciting once that started happening and you started hearing like Everybody's Changing and somebody we know on the radio. And then it just felt like it was one single after another and everything just went amazingly. And yeah, I think probably now more than ever in a way we sort of treasure those songs. Because they do, especially over a period of time, you see how much they mean to people. And it's
they really do.
Incredible.
And it's a classic album, but I also think that you guys followed it up with a really good record. Because that's not difficult. Because I think Hopes and Fears came out the same year that the Killers released their first album, and those records were like the records of the year, just on repeat. And then the Killers one, follow-up was pretty good, but I remember especially A Bad Dream from the second record. That's such a brilliant song. I mean, did you feel like a huge amount of pressure following up that first record, or were you just having the time of your lives by that stage?
We weren't having the time of our lives, that's for sure. It was quite a difficult period because I was having quite a lot of problems. I found it very difficult to adjust to life in the spotlight, having kind of thought it would be the answer to all my problems. Soon realised that all it did was shine a light on it, and actually that didn't feel good. I just remember I put on a lot of weight and I started taking loads of drugs, and so for me personally it was a very dark time. And then I think that was I think that our relationships as a band were strained, and you could definitely hear that in Under the Iron Sea. It's a much darker, more sort of introspective record,
It's pretty quite a kind of haunting vibe to it, but I enjoyed that personally. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I'm
That's
sorry.
probably what made it a good record. In a way.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's nice that it's, you know, the first record is very romantic and very, I mean, it's pretty sparse in a way, isn't it? It's quite simple. But the second record is sort of super dark and layered and soundscapey. And so in a way, I think all of that stuff, even though it was difficult at the time being in it, it actually made for a record that was a real contrast from the first one.
Yeah.
And which I think in the long term has been a really good thing for us, because it's, you know, there were plenty of people who would have liked just to basically do another Hopes and Fears, or try to.
The US label for a start.
Yeah.
I think the US label were quite surprised when they heard it, probably. But,
yeah. But it sort of, once we'd done that, it then meant that we were sort of free to, I think we just set out our stall as being a kind of band that wanted to keep changing all the time, and well, that's what we've tried to do.
And when you guys are making a record, how long do you usually take?
Well, Tim locks himself away for probably a year or two, isn't it? Writing songs.
And it can be a while.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? It takes a few years all in, probably, doesn't it? I think.
Sort of including the writing and then the time with the band in the studio.
Taking it out on the road. I mean, yeah, it's
a couple of years probably. It depends. I mean, some people are great at sort of just knocking these albums out really quickly, but we're sort of quite methodical and quite slow about it.
And so for this latest record, was it 7 years since you'd made a record, or, you know, quite a gap, 7 or 8 years or something like that?
7 years, yeah.
And did you sort of have like a huge backlog of songs stored up for it, or?
Well, funnily enough, not really. I did have a lot of songs, but the thing about Keane is that we've, you know, whether we like it or not, we sort of bring out the best in each other musically, and so I found sort of working on my own, not really knowing if there was going to be a Keane album. I wrote lots of songs, but I wasn't really
sure whether you guys would.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether we. I definitely didn't feel like I was writing for a Keane album, and I definitely didn't feel like I was writing my best stuff. And it wasn't really until quite, a couple of years ago probably, that I started sort of tapping into a more a vein of stuff that I felt was a much higher quality. And then even after we started talking about doing this album, I think that then I started writing a lot more, and it just felt like there was a. I guess you want to have a kind of energy. You're capturing a particular story, and you want to make a cohesive album rather than a sort of gathering together a bunch of songs you've written over 7 years, if you know what I mean. So actually, most of the songs were written in probably the space of a year or something.
And because it had been, quite a lengthy gap since you guys had worked together, and that was following, I guess it would have been like 15, 20 years. How's it felt kind of getting the band back together and going out on the road, and must have been quite a joyous experience after such a gap?
Yeah, it's been really nice. It's funny because, as you say, the band has been around for such a long time, especially when you include kind of growing up in the same town and going to the same schools and knowing each other sort of so well, that actually, although 5-6 years we were apart, not making music together, in some ways it's a long time. Also in the context of that whole story, it's not actually a very long time. Yeah. No. But also I think the other thing is when you know each other so well, and you have spent so much time with each other before, you kind of know what you're getting, and I think we were ready to have that again in our lives, just I think the chemistry in the studio and when we're playing live, and just our sort of our friendships and the dynamics of friendships are sort of were rekindled, and yeah, I think it's been mostly a very happy experience.
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
So I always finish off these interviews with 2 questions, which are, well, I mean, I kind of already answered the deep cut question, because my favourite, I mean, I don't know, I guess it was a single, A Bad Dream, but that's definitely my favourite Keane, deep cut. But I kind of I want to ask you guys what your favourite, like not the singles, not Somewhere Only We Know, or not anything that's too well known, that casual listeners may not have heard before. What are your favourite Keane deep cuts?
We've always, particularly in the early days, really prided ourselves on trying to do really great B-sides and lavished quite a lot of attention, and probably used up some really good songs that were only ever heard by like the kind of hardcore fans. But I think that's really nice. I think that's something we've always been quite proud of, is probably giving a bit more in those sort of places than other bands might. So I mean, there are loads actually that I really love, B-sides and sort of bonus tracks and stuff. There's a song called Myth, which I really love, which I really wanted to be on Strangeland, which was our 4th record, but however much I tried, I couldn't convince everyone that it should be on it. But there we go. I'd recommend that one. I think it's a beautiful song.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's a sort of relatively deep cut, but one I really love is a song called Try Again, which is on the 2nd album, which is very, it's just another Keane ballad. But it's, I don't know, we've been playing it again recently in a sort of acoustic way, and it's funny, having had a break and then you come back to the songs and you start to hear them sort of as if someone else wrote them. And I was sort of, when we were playing that the other day in South America, I was thinking, this is pretty good.
Pat on the back for me.
So,
no, it's okay.
Happy with that.
And my final question is, I mean, I guess it would be the bands who influenced you in the first place, but who would your greatest of all time be? Your favourite artists? And they can be dead or alive, I'm not just asking for recommendations as to who to include.
Well, for me, I think I'm going to say Bruce Springsteen, just because I admire him in a lot of different ways, but I think his integrity, I think, as an artist is something that's really, really admirable. I think it shows, over the course of whatever it's been, 40 years or something, it shows that the artistic integrity that is sort of he's clung to throughout his career makes for quite an amazing body of work. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, and served him well, because he's the critics love him. He's never had that sort of like 80s disco album that everybody laughed at.
Well, he did have a couple of
stingers
in the 90s that were pretty panned, but
kept on trucking, didn't he?
Yes, but he does what he wants to do at any given time, and he's also quite philosophical about whether it's a commercial success or not. I love, when he had those albums that after Born in the USA that sort of weren't so commercially successful. He's there's a great quote about how it was sometimes it's just someone else's turn, and I really like that. And I think that can serve a lot of people well when you're in a sort of industry that's obsessed with sort of maintaining success all the time. Actually, there's a lot to be said for just doing what you believe in artistically.
Todd?
I'm going to choose Freddie Mercury, just because as a kid growing up wanting to be a front man, he was everything to me in that respect. And it's really interesting hearing Brian and Roger talk about him and just say that first and foremost, he was a great musician, and I love hearing that, because you think of him as the showman and the performer and all of that, but actually to think of him as just a great musician. If you think of the great songs he wrote and
harmonies,
his
and
piano playing, and obviously the control in his voice, and I mean it's like a force of nature, really. To be able to sing like that is unique, really, with that much kind of passion and emotion and the range and all of that. So I just think every facet of Freddie, in his life is just so inspirational.
both very good choices. Thanks so much, guys, for taking the time.
Thanks.
Pleasure. Thank you.